Hello, everyone. I'm sorry I was a little disjointed there as I began. Deborah Hamilton, Hamilton Law and Mediation, and the Why Do Pets Matter podcast. Today is going to be a little bit different discussion because the MAAP program has really come to the fore uh, the last 2 days because a colleague of mine in Irish Setters, who had called me several times to make a MAP plan, and we had, discussed it a number of times, suddenly passed away. She had 6 dogs. No one could find her MAP plan if indeed she ever made it, and nobody could find a will. And so, all of you who've been on here before know that the MAP plan stands for something in particular, which is making a plan, which means you have to sit down and write a plan up. How do I want my dogs, cats, birds, horses, fish cared for if something's going to happen to me? And you need to address the needs of each pet. So this dog's afraid of thunder and lightning. This dog can't eat lamb. This dog doesn't get along with other dogs. These are all really important pieces of information you need to give to someone coming into your home to take the dogs. The other A stands for appointing caregivers. Now, the number one, and I know, Susan, you've told me this a million times, the number one issue is finding caregivers. I can't appoint anybody I can't find, Deborah. Well, you need to look. You need to really look, because this incredibly unfortunate passing of my good friend in Irish Setters brought forth to me the reason why I'm here every Wednesday at 6:30 at night. Because if you don't have a plan for your dogs, the people who come into your house don't know what to do. They're going to do the best they can. They're going to do what they think you wanted them to do. And maybe it might be better than what you would have considered to do. However, it may not be. And so for me, tonight's program is going to be really personal, because a friend of mine passed away and left her dogs with no plan to make. So the key piece, not only did she not make a plan, not only did she not appoint caregivers or address the needs of her pet, nobody could find a piece of information to point them in the right direction to find who was supposed to take care of the dogs. So tonight's going to be a little, I might actually cry sometimes, because it really was devastating. I got a call in the afternoon that actually I got a text that my friend passed and her 6 dogs need somewhere to go. And at the beginning of this call, I said that she had spoken to me a number of times about making a MAP plan, and no one could find any sort of information about where to put her dogs. So I have been on the phone trying to talk to people about trying to locate and excavate where she might have this plan, where she might have a will, where she might have any information about the dogs. So as we always do, I'm going to check in with you guys before I go off on my tangent. I see that my good friend Joy Rosenthal is here as well. She's a good friend and attorney, a collaborative professional with me, and she has pets. So she's here because, oops, something might occur, and she wants to make sure her pet navigates that journey with a plume as opposed to with a plunk. She's here. So Joy, why don't you introduce yourself to the rest, and then we'll go really quick around to talk. So you're an attorney and you're here in New York?
Yes, I live in Brooklyn, and last year I adopted a wonderful, sweet little angel of a dog. And she has separation anxiety. So not only do I have to plan for her, but it's like she's like sort of special needs. Sometimes I laugh and say she's not the only one with separation anxiety, but I really do, like, we're going through it now and trying to help her get over it. But that's why I'm particularly worried about her.
Well, I'm so glad you're here, and I'm so glad you brought her into your life, especially during COVID, because it made a huge difference. That human animal bond really helped people during COVID, which we found we've been doing this since the March COVID started. And most
Well,
of us have been here. We have people coming in and out, but the three hardcore, along with Kieran, if he shows up, will be here. So, Susan, I'm going to check in with you. How is Maggie?
You know, Maggie had the first grooming in a year yesterday. Unfortunately, the groomer wasn't able to complete the job. So,
Is that because Maggie bit her?
well, I think she was trying to bite her. And so now we have to try again, but it has to be under sedation.
Oh, goodness.
I know. I did contact Kathy about it, and she's going to be helping me. And so Maggie has one strip around her where all the fur has been taken off. So, yeah.
She looks a little funny today, but you're working through it. I'm so glad you called Kathy. So, Joy, there's people we refer people to who help. Kathy Madsen is with Preventavet, and she does a lot of behavior modifications. So I'm happy to send you her contact information. I know Susan has found her to be great, and she probably does it on a consult basis from the MAP plans, so that if you hire her, great, but she'll definitely talk to you because she's my friend and she's been on the podcast. So she just is really wonderful and helps people with anxiety, helps people like Susan, who has a dog who was totally COVID, so she never got any exposure. So she's I think we could say, Susan, very naughty.
Very naughty.
Very naughty.
Yeah, she's the boss in the house. And she, as I mentioned before, she walks around like she owns the place. That hasn't changed.
But we're trying to help Susan because, of course, we're not going anyplace or doing anything. We're trying to help Susan to make sure she makes a plan, because Maggie has definite personality needs in case something happens, and also to help her with the personality needs. So I'm going to go to Sally. How are you, Sally? How's Athena and Roxy?
Athena and Roxy are both great. Yep, they're just my geriatric dogs, and they're resting, and they run outside for a little while and then head back in again. They're very smart.
Oh, good. Good. So, Connie, how are you? How is the dog show? How's everybody doing? You and I both have 4-point majors, so that's good.
Oh, well, we're cooling our heels until the end of October. That is our next dog show. In fact, Halloween weekend here in Southern California. We have had a few dog shows canceled because of venue issues, and people are scrambling to try to reschedule. One big 4-day show weekend did reschedule. Another had to be canceled completely. Wow. So we're still going through that. But the fires, the good news is the fires seem to be, the big ones seem to be getting sort of under control in Northern California, but there are more breaking out. So there are, lots of animal sanctuaries and shelters that are taking in animals. And again, people who don't have pets, plans for their pets, are, really in the lurch.
Really scrambling. Yeah.
Really scrambling.
It's really funny. When the hurricane was coming into Louisiana, people were wondering, what are we going to do with the pets? And I know some of you might have seen all the dogs in the baby swimming pool being pushed across the river. That's not the time to figure out what you're going to do with your pets. In this conversation, because it's been for a long time and we only usually spend about a half hour, so I give incredible tidbits. You really want to make sure. I mean, Brooklyn, I don't know if you were affected by the floods, Joy, but Brooklyn was flooded. Brooklyn was one of the areas that was flooded in New York. So was Queens, so was Manhattan. And you've got to make a plan for where to go or what to do with your pet before the waters strike. Now, it was really unforeseen that the floodwaters would do what they did, although they did it for Superstorm Sandy. However, that was more tidal water than water from the sky. However, it seems we can find a new way to flood New York in any given moment. But if you have a pet, you really have to be careful about where you're going. So when we talk about making a plan for your pet, it includes, what am I going to do if there's a storm on the horizon? They give us 2 or 3 days usually about a hurricane or a snowstorm or whatever. I always suggest that you make a reservation at a hotel far enough inland, far enough away that you can always cancel, because I always say, please don't make it on hotels.com or Travelocity, because sometimes they don't let you cancel it. Make it with the hotel, get a room that you can cancel same day or day before, so that you know you have a room for your pet and you can get there. Very important. That's part of making a plan. Making a plan if a bad weather situation comes up. Make a plan if you can't get home when you have traveled on an airplane. Some of us are doing that now. And let me tell you, planes are getting delayed and canceled. So you better make a plan to take care of your pets long-term, short-term if you don't get home. If you're stuck in traffic, if you have a disease, we call it the D's. So it's divorce. If you get divorced, have a plan for your pet before you dislike your spouse. That's always better. If you get a pet with a spouse or a significant other, make that plan of what's going to happen to the pet while you still like each other. It's so much easier than trying to make that plan when you're in the middle of a divorce and you're angry. Unfortunately, your pet doesn't hate your ex. You do, but your pet would really like to stay with them rather than be put in a kennel if you're going on vacation. So maybe you can work something out that's helpful for the animal. I mean, something that people don't always pay attention to. I'm going to go back for a minute to my friend who passed away yesterday, and her 6 dogs that, hey, Marty, how are you? Hi, Kieran. She passed away and she had 6 dogs. Her brother came in to find her because she didn't show up for work. Hey, Marty, how are you? Her brother came in and found her. And he turned to the veterinarian who had called to say she was missing from work, and they both went together to find her. And he turned to the veterinarian and said, well, I don't want anything to do with the dogs. And this is her only relative. I don't want anything to do with the dogs. And I want you to take them. So the vet took them. Now, if you'd made a plan, and okay, so Connie, what's the one thing that's going to tell the EMTs what to do when they're in your house?
The note on the fridge and the note on the door. And if you're in your car and something happens, the note on your dash or your visor or wherever it is.
Because you really need to have a note somewhere that says, if there's an emergency, my dogs are supposed to stay in my house. Please go to, if you live in an apartment building, go to my neighbor in 2B. They will take care of the dog. These are the 3 numbers to call, because you don't want EMS, you don't want your ambulance service to have to figure out that they have to call animal care and control to come and get your dog. That's the last thing you want. You want your dogs to be in your house because you've made a plan for who's going to come over to take care of your dog short term. You know, the nosy neighbor. I always say, please find the nosy neighbor, because the nosy neighbor will say, hey, I know who to call. Leave the dog, the cat, the bird, the horse, the fish there. I'll call them. Also, on the refrigerator are those numbers that the police can call. So they know this woman's telling the truth, because these are the numbers. Here it is. She has the same piece of paper, because we always need a piece of paper that says, in the event of an emergency, I have left Sally Anderson Bruce to take care of my dog. She's my nosy neighbor next door, and she will be able to call the people. Or you have the numbers on your refrigerator that say, in the case of an emergency, please call Sally Anderson Bruce, Connie Kohler, Susan Capuano. These are the people who are going to take my dogs. And animal care and control will not be called. And if they reach one of these people, say they reach Connie, and Connie says, absolutely, I'll be there in an hour, even though she might live in Wyoming, who cares? Because she knows that Sally lives nearby, and she's going to call Sally, and Sally will go get the dogs. And if Sally can't get the dogs, Susan lives nearby. And so Susan's going to go get the dogs. You really have to have a network to help you take care of these dogs. I often talk about moving from Armonk, where my whole entire network was right in place, to Pleasantville, where I had no one. And during COVID, I realized I could get sick and be carted off. So I put 3x5 cards in my neighbors who had dogs in their mailboxes. And I said, in the event of an emergency, if you need someone to take care of your pet short term in your house, here's my number, here's my address. I'm happy to take care of your dogs. And every single one of them came back to my house and said, oh my God, I never even thought of that. Thanks so much. And I'll do the same for you. Here's my number, here's my address. Because people really want to help people with pets, but you have to ask. And so my girlfriend who passed away, Irish setter breeder, for her entire life. This was her entire life. Irish setters were her entire life. She talked to me on a number of occasions, and there are some on here who will remain nameless, who I've spoken to for a long time, who have yet to put their sign on their refrigerator, although I'm going to check in and see if that sign is on the refrigerator. And she never did any of the things I suggested she do. Put a sign on the refrigerator in case, you're living alone. If you live alone, you need to put up information that gives people an idea of what you need to do next. What do you need to do first thing? Because you really don't want to have the dogs go to animal care and control. And I'll tell you why. If your dogs go to animal care and control, there's a certain legislative period that animal care and control will keep them. If you're stuck in the hospital and you can't get to them and you don't have anybody to get to them, they could then go to a rescue or a shelter or to a breed rescue. If they do, and they're adopted, you will never see them again. You will never see them again. Because once they're adopted in or out of a rescue, those contracts are beautifully written by really smart attorneys, and they are foolproof. You cannot get your dogs back. And many people who have purebred dogs who went to the hospital and thought their dogs would be safe in animal care and control until they got out could not get their dogs back because they were rescued. I'm going to check in with Marty and with Kieran. Marty, how are you doing? You can unmute yourself. How's everything going? And thanks for checking in with me today about Jan. Marty's on mute. Marty might not be able to. She might be in transition from the car. Kieran. Oh, there she is.
Yeah, I'm sorry, driving, so I'm just trying to lay low. We're heading to Missouri. So I'm good. I can tell you that the dogs, this particular group of dogs is in the care of one of my associates. So,
well, we're gonna get back to you because you're breaking up. You're in a bad area. So let me get back to you. Kieran, how's One-Eyed Leo? Status quo?
No, not status quo. It is, there's never a status quo with this project. It's like a puppy that has a life of its own, so it's always jumping around. I will keep the good wine to last. So when you sign off with me tonight, I will give you some very good news.
Oh, great.
About the whole project. So we will have that to look forward to.
So Kieran wrote a book called One-Eyed Leo that gives pet owners, new pet owners, or pet owners that are considering getting a pet, a huge lesson, both their kids and the parents, on responsible pet ownership. It should be given by every breeder, every rescue, every shelter. Before somebody adopts a dog, they should hand these out so that people can make sure that they know what they're getting into before they get the dog. And Joy, this probably would have been a great book for you to read before you got the dog, not because you wouldn't have gotten the dog, but you would have known what you were getting into a little better. It's a fabulous dog, and I'm happy to send it to you so you can look at it. Kieran's in Tenerife. He's been with us for the entire time, and he wrote this book during COVID because he thought it might be a really good book now for people who've adopted dogs or are thinking of adopting dogs to understand what the responsibility and commitment is. And it's really a fabulous program. So to get back to the MAAP plan, because I know that I want to keep you guys not too long today, only a half hour. So you're going to make your plan, right? Jan didn't make a plan. And so when people came into her house, this is real life. This is real life. They came into her house and they found her and she'd passed away. 6 dogs were there. Her brother didn't know what to do. He may not be a dog guy, but even if he was a dog guy, he wouldn't have known what to do. The vet didn't know what to do. They called the vet tech to come to take all 6 dogs. They weren't sure, the vet, if they had all the dogs because they had 7 files for dogs, but only 6 dogs. And one of the young dogs is a fence jumper. So there was a moment of concern that maybe the young dog had jumped the fence. But as it turns out, one of her dogs had passed away in June, and the vet hadn't updated his records yet because she passed somewhere else. So not that that's a good thing, but at least we knew we had all the dogs. All the co-owners are coming forward. All the breeders are coming forward. Everybody's going to take the 2 cats, Fat Stan and another cat, her mother's cat, and then the dogs, the co-owners. They're all coming. All the breeders are coming forward and taking care of the dogs. And it's Now, Connie, you understand what I mean by this. It's the best of worlds and the worst of worlds, because what would Jan have wanted? Well, we don't know. We have no idea what Jan would have wanted to do with those dogs. We have no idea what she would tell you are the quirks of dog number 1, dog number 2, dog number 3, dog number 4. And some people might know all the dogs and say, oh, this one is a runner, like this one of them is a fence jumper. This one is a sweetheart. This one had an accident and is a little quirky. These things aren't written down. So whoever gets these dogs doesn't have the roadmap. And part of making a MAP plan, as Joy said when she started, I want somebody to know that this dog has anxiety. If something happens to me, this is what's worked for me to help with the anxiety. Or, as I said, we'll help her find Kathy Madsen, and Kathy will give her tricks of the trade on how to deal with anxiety, because we all want to make our dogs and cats and birds and horses transition safely. As breeders, we want to do it from whelping box to Rainbow Bridge, usually. But as owners, we really want to know what's going on with our pets if something happens to us. So the M stands for make a plan. The A stands for addressing the needs of the pet. And that includes everything. If you have a young dog, it's one story. A year later, it's another story. 5 years later, it's another story. And when they're older, it's a whole different can of worms. So you really have to update your MAP plan all the time. The hardest one, of course, as I said, is appoint caregivers. But let me tell you, there are vet techs who will help if you befriend them, neighbors who will help short-term or long-term if you befriend them. There's breeders. If you got the dog from a rescue, you probably, if you read the contract, which most people never do, you probably have to return that dog to the rescue or the shelter if you can't keep it. And so that's something you can do. As with the co-ownerships, which I talk a lot about in my programs, if you're transparent and you talk to your co-owner that there is someone who knows this dog better than they do, and yeah, they want to take the dog back. If this person knows the dog and the dog knows them, I don't think there's any breeder who wouldn't let that dog go to Connie or go to Sally or go to Joy, as long as Sally and Connie and Joy will sign a document that says, if something happens to me, I give the dog back to the breeder. Because what we're trying to do is we're trying to make sure we know where that dog is. And so if there's somebody who knows my dog, I mean, Sally knows my dogs beautifully. If she knew someone who was taking care of, my dogs and they knew it better, I would be happy to, as long as I knew that they knew they had to call me. They couldn't ever get rid of the dogs. And I think that's what drives co-owners to want to have their dogs back. And that's what drives co-owners to go crazy when you just give it to somebody else and don't talk to them. Transparency is key. Also shelters. I mean, I don't know how many of you remember that Ellen had adopted from a shelter and the dog didn't work out. So she gave it to one of her housekeepers and the shelter went ballistic. And wanted the dog back because in the contract it said that she couldn't give that dog away. She had to return it to a shelter. And the amount of bad press that came for that shelter because they enforced that one paragraph in the contract, and the goodwill that could have come from it had they had a conversation. And I'm sure that Ellen never read the contract. I mean, I know Joy and I both know that people never read contracts. They sign them, they never read them. And so it's typical that they wouldn't have read it. And she gave it to the housekeeper in good faith, and the housekeeper might have been a great owner, but because there was a contract term, there was a big kerfluffle. And these are the kind of things that you have to check for and you have to plan for, and then you have to do a workaround. That's what we do at the workshop. So just for a minute, I will let you know that it's the 16th and the 17th. I think Rose is going to put it up in the chat. We're going to have a workshop, 2 days, 2 hours, Friday and Saturday. We're going to build a MAP plan for everybody who wants to come. It's really inexpensive. It's 4 hours of my time. I'm only going to limit it to 20 people because I want to make sure that I'm there with everyone. So it's going to have you make a MAP plan. You'll be done. And of course, I spend 4 hours with you, 2 hours, an hour on M, an hour on A, an hour on A, an hour on P, and then we wrap up. And of course, I'm always ready. to talk to you. And the best thing is I also talk to your attorneys, because I will tell you that if you go to your trust and estate attorney and say, I want to make a plan for my pet, they won't know what to do. I can tell you that most of my MAP plan workshop people have connected me with their attorney, so I can explain to their attorney what it is they want to do and how they want to incorporate it into their estate planning, because you need a plan that stands outside of your will in case you don't die. So there are so many D's I can't even begin to tell you, but your pets can be affected by disease, disaster, delay, divorce, dementia, and a bunch delay. I said delay. So there's a bunch of them that they can be affected by that you haven't made a plan for. So I'm going to see if Marty is in a better place, or are you staying off the air? You can stay off the air, Marty, but are you in a better place driving to Missouri? Marty is my dear friend. She's a lawyer and a veterinarian. She's a little bit of an overachiever. And she's a good friend of mine. She's also, are you in a, oh, you're in a better place.
I don't know. Am I better? I'm next to a semi, right?
Yeah. No, it's terrible.
Not sure.
That's because you're going to Missouri, you know. It's a bad place. So Marty is like this wonderful friend. She's also one of the best repro vets in the country. And she and I have talked a lot. She did a book. There's a podcast on Why Do Pets Matter? The Pandemic Puppy, which would be a great book, Joy, for you to read. She talks about how she wrote it and how she helps people get through a pandemic puppy. So this would be great. Susan, it'd be great for you as well. It's called The Pandemic Puppy. If you go to Why Do Pets Matter, the podcast, you can see her podcast there, hear her talk about it. And then we have the link to where you can find it. So you can do that. So you're going to make a plan for your pet. M, you're going to address the needs of your pet. This is key, absolutely key. Joy would put anxiety down. Susan would put down that she may be nippy and she rules the roost. Connie would put down that they're terriers, and so that's self-explanatory. And Sally would put down that she has 2 very old dogs that need certain care. That's how you address the needs of the pet. That also includes when they get their heartworm, if they're on any medication or not, when they get bathed, when they, you know, whatever you want to tell people. The more you tell people about what your dog's needs are, the better your dogs are going to be cared for. And that's what my friend didn't do. So these 6 dogs are going to go to new homes, and they're going to be a blank slate. And I'm going to go to Connie in a minute because we both have multiple dogs. And so we know that our clubs, she has Wheaton Terriers, I have Irish Setters. Our clubs do come to the aid of our breeders and place the dogs. However, it's so much better to be able to hand a document to someone and say, these are what my dogs are like. This is what my dog does in thunder. This is what my dog does when the mailman comes. This is what my dog does, like the one dog that Jan had that goes right over fences. This is the dog that goes over fences. And you don't want to find that out as the dog goes over the fence. And then the last one that nobody ever does, and it is the most important one, and I'm sorry I didn't leave enough time, but I will stay on for as long as anybody has questions, is you got to publish your plan. So who do you publish it with? The most important people to publish it with are your caregivers. And only one of your caregivers should be a family member. You can publish the plan with all your family members, but only one should be a family member, because if you're sick or they're sick, you're going to want to have them taking care of you, or you're going to want to take care of them. So having 5 family members take care of your dogs, not always the best. I found that out when I broke my ankle, which created the MAP plan, right? So I had nobody to take care of my pets, and so I built it. My husband told me he was taking care of me, and I'm like, holy Toledo. And the 2 people I had a glass of wine with and said, oh, you'll take care of my dogs, I'll take care of your dogs, nothing in writing. They couldn't take care of my dogs. So I wrote this plan because of that. So when you publish it, you need to publish it with everyone who is your caregiver, because as I said before, Connie will know about Sally, and Sally will know about Susan, and Susan will know about Marty, and all of them will know that if one of them gets a call, they're going to say, yes, I'll be able to take care of the dogs. And even if they aren't, they know that either Susan, Sally, or Connie will be able to if they can't, because they know about each other and they all work together to make sure the pets find a new home. Connie, we're going to get to you in a minute. And then you need to publish it in writing, has to be in writing, with your attorney and with your veterinarian, because your veterinarian has to know that you are allowing Connie or Sally or Marty or Susan to bring your dog, cat, bird, horse to the vet. Otherwise, by law, they're really not allowed to take care of the dog because you aren't the owner. So you need to let the vet know. Now, these are extra people. So if Jan had written a MAP plan, not only would the caregivers have been on a piece of paper on the fridge, so her brother, when he walked into the house, would have known to call Connie or Sally or Susan, but Connie and Sally and Susan would have been able to come over and they could have taken the dogs. The dogs wouldn't have had to go to the vet that she worked for and then transition to another vet. And then people from all over the country were trying to coordinate how that was going to happen. It would have been right there. All the numbers, all the steps would have been right there. And so that's why we come together every week so I can, be crazy telling you all, make a plan, appoint caregivers, address the needs of your pet, and publish it. Because if your caregivers don't have your plans in writing, not helpful. If the police come and, they come in and they say, I'm ready to take care of the pet, they have to have a document to show the police to say, yes, Connie has the ability to take care of my pet. Susan is a caregiver as well. Sally is a caregiver as well, because you have to release these dogs to these people because you trust them. They know what to do. You've talked to them. Having this conversation is hard. You have talked to them, and you need to make sure that's there. And the second thing, which Connie pointed out, was that you need something in your car as well. Because if you're traveling with your pet or you're traveling without your pet, you need to let somebody know you have a pet. So I always put a 3x5 card on my dashboard saying, in case of an emergency, please call this number. I have pets at home alone. Or if I'm traveling in my van with all my dogs, if something happens to me, please call one of these three people. And some of us drive cross country because we're crazy, like Marty, who's going from Wisconsin to Missouri. And these are the people that will be close to me while I'm driving. So, you might know people, you might not. Again, the best thing about being in a breed club is that you know people in every state in the union. The worst thing about being in a breed club is everybody in the state in the union, and you get this false sense of security that they're going to take care of your dogs if something happens to you. Not unless you make a plan. So before I close, let me ask Connie, what was your question, Con?
The only thing I wanted to add when we were talking about where you put all the notifications for the EMTs, and you just mentioned your vet and people who are authorized to handle your dog at the vet if you cannot. I am about to take a trip back to the Philadelphia area at the beginning of October for our National Breed Club Specialty Weekend. And so I will have to board my two Wheatons at my vet down the hill. They have my entire MAP plan. Now, my best friend, who is number one on that MAP plan, is going with me. She's my roomie, and she's also on the national board with me. So she will not be available. But I've still got two other people, plus my niece who lives in Metro LA, who is the co-executor of my will, along with her mother, my sister.
And she has a copy of your MAP plan.
And they all have copies of the MAP plan. So I can get on the plane and not a problem. Now, the end of the month, I am going back to Baltimore for my nephew's, her kid brother's wedding. And all of my caregivers will be in town. So I really won't have to worry. But I board my dogs at the vet. And they are safe. They're properly cared for. But if anything happens to me and I either can't make it home or even worse, then I know that all the proper contacts are in place. And with that, I do have to jump off because I've got a Zoom with my National Breed Club board right now. So I wish everybody a good week, and I'll see you next time.
Absolutely. Thanks, Connie. So Sally,
Hey, Connie.
do you have any questions?
No, but I was just going to say we had a long weekend, and I told the neighbor I'd take in a parcel for him. I walked into the house, unlocked it with the parcel, and there's a box with the dog food, the vet instructions, all the instructions about the dog. And he hadn't told me a word, but I'd spoken to him about the MAAP plan. There were the 3 phone numbers. I stumbled over it when I walked in the door, and I was like, he got it. He got it.
Yep. I am so glad you guys are my disciples out there beating people over the head to make sure that they do this so that people know what they want to do with their pets. Susan, any questions, honey?
No, I'm just, it's a struggle with Maggie because she is a biter and she has a lot of anxiety, and so it's hard for me to, but I'm working on it. I'm
So
working
you put
on,
the breeder's name on the fridge, right, Susan?
yes.
Liar, liar, pants on fire. So you're going to do that tonight. You're going to do that tonight because
Yeah.
I mean, I have to tell you, Jan was not sick. I mean, she was not sick. She just either was laying in her lazy boy or in bed, and then she was gone. So,
I'm
you know,
so
not to
sorry
be
about that.
Oh,
Yeah, I mean,
it's
it is.
terrible. It's terrible. I mean, because she was such a force in our breed, but you know, we don't have a crystal ball. So these
Right.
animals really rely on us, and especially in your case, because your husband isn't feeling well and your son isn't capable of taking the dog. So just put the breeder's number up. Just put it up on the fridge and the breeder will come. It won't, believe me, the breeder will come. I'm sure Marty will bear that out because most breeders are going to come, and you bought it from a reputable, it's a Catan, Marty. So she bought it from a reputable breeder. That breeder will come and take the dog if God forbid something happens. And that's better than letting it go to the shelter, God forbid.
No, absolutely. Yeah. No,
Okay, so tonight you're going to do that and make me happy and text me. Joy, do you have any questions? I've just hit you with a fire hose, so you're probably like, holy crap.
No, I actually have the thing on my fridge.
Yay!
So I feel like I'm a little bit ahead of the game. Although I'm going to look at it now because I might have prepared it before I got her, but I know who the people are, and the vet is terrific. I guess my one question is, I would rather her go to the people I know, but I did read the contract, and it does say I have to give it back. I give her back.
So you get
they
around
were-
that with transparency.
Yeah,
So
I mean, I guess that's my question. What do you think? And you might actually know the shelter. It's at Northwind Kennels.
Yep,
What's it
up in
called?
Bedford.
Rescue Right, and they're lovely people, but it was a huge facility with 180 dogs. I mean, she was
And nobody
so
ever
freaked
wants to give them back, yeah.
Right. So what do you do about that?
So it's like a co-ownership. When I give the workshops, I talk about this all the time because good breeders want their dogs back if you can't care for them because we're responsible. We brought them into the world. We want to make sure they go to the right homes. Well, same thing with rescues and shelters. They want to know the dog is safe and going to a good home. So what you do is, listen, I've read the contract. Paragraph 7 says I have to return the dog to you. Would it be okay if I let you know the 3 people in my life who know Fluffy better than anybody and who would be willing to sign a contract with you going forward if something happens to me so they can keep Fluffy? I don't think there's any shelter or any rescue that's going to say absolutely not, because A, it hasn't happened yet, and B, you're giving them notice, and C, you're being transparent about recognizing what the contract said, what your responsibilities are, what they feel their responsibilities are. You're appreciating and are grateful for them taking responsibility, but saying to them, listen, I can help you out. Sally, Mary, and Susan all want Fluffy. They know that you are primary on the contract, but if something happens to me, they're going to be the ones who are going to be on the spot to take care, to get Fluffy. And they're more than happy to get in touch with you and work out something with you so they can keep Fluffy. I have yet to find a shelter that said, no, we're not going to do it, except maybe they want a fee. And then you just build that into, your pet trust or whatever you have set up for the care of your dogs, because that way these people can keep the dog. It simply is, I know I, as a breeder, and hopefully Marty will be in a better spot, and Marty as a breeder, we don't want our dogs going to anyone we don't know. So that's why some of us co-own it. That's why our contracts will say you can't place it, you need to return it. But if you came up to me and said, my son loves my dog, my husband loves my dog, my neighbor loves my dog, this person who's been the caregiver of this dog for 10 years loves this dog, I don't think any of us would say, no, you can't give it to that person. What we would say is, great, introduce me to your husband, to your son, to your dog walker, whoever, and I'll sit down and chat with them, and we'll work out an agreement where they get the same benefit you get, which is this dog will come back to me if they don't have a chance. And I just need to know their email address. I need to know their telephone number. I need to know where they live so that I can, keep track of the dog. That's what good breeders do. That's what good shelters do. That's what good rescues do. That's why they write it. But if you provide them with an answer, the last thing they really want is to have an extra dog back at a shelter or a rescue. If they have a competent person ready to take the dog who knows the dog, they'll do that. And I would say that I'd always provide them with at least 2 people who could take the dog, especially a rescue, because they tend to be a little persnickety. So a breeder would probably be more hands-on and more able to talk to the person. Rescues, I think you just have to make sure there are at least 2. But that would be something you could consider, Joy. And if you do have the document up on the fridge, just make sure it says, in case of emergency, do not take my dogs to the animal care and control. Leave them here. These are the 3 numbers to call that will take care of the dogs while I'm away. And put the name and the telephone number, and then give the person who's on that list on your fridge a note that says, I, Joy Rosenthal, have given Sally Anderson the ability to come into my house and take care of my dogs until I return. Because you want to make it stupid proof. Okay. So it's not a criticism, but when things are going into, emergency, you want to make sure the police know and animal care and control knows and the EMS know that these dogs do not need to go to animal care and control because the neighbor's going to take care of them. And the neighbor knows the 3 people who are going to come and take care of them if the neighbor isn't the person who's going to take care of them. So that's the only reason I would make it a little more dog specific, so that they know who it is. And make sure you also provide the person who is going to come into your house with that document, because not only do they have to show their driver's license probably to the police to show that they really are Sally Anderson Bruce, but it would be easier for them to have a note from you giving them permission that they can show the police.
That's really great.
Yeah, it's just a simple thing. And when you're in your car, making sure, everybody says, well, I have a card in my wallet. Well, that means somebody has to look for it. And I'm so against having anybody look for anything with respect to the care of your dogs when there's an emergency. I want you to try to make it idiot proof. I'm trying to, so Marty will appreciate this, and Connie would have, I'm trying to get handlers to do that. So in the case of emergency, this is who you call for all the dogs in my truck. And I'm having them all have their owners give them information that if in fact any of the owners have an emergency, this is who to call in the event I drop dead. Because one of Jan's dogs was with a handler. She had come home, but if that dog was with a handler, that handler doesn't know who this dog's supposed to go to unless you tell them, right? It's supposed to go back to you. So I'm on a mission now to also bring handlers into the loop, to have them not only ask their clients, tell their clients who the dog would be with if the handler gets in trouble, but who the dog should go to if the owner gets in trouble, because the handlers have to know as well. It really is very important. Marty, are you still in no man's land? Yeah. Yeah, you're even in worse no man's land now. There's like no sound. Oh, I'm so glad you were here though, because it makes me feel so good. And you'll have to let me know how it went. So until next week, because it's already 7:13, I can't believe it. Let's all take a minute to hope Jan is in a really good place with all her Irish setters, which I know she is. Let's thank the Irish Setter Club of America for jumping in and taking care of the dogs immediately, and their co-owners taking care of the dogs. Thank God for breed clubs. It doesn't help the individual owner like Joy or like Susan or like Sally, because they don't have that network. So that's why the MAAP plan is so key for them, but it really is key for the owners of show dogs as well. And next time when we talk, and probably on the workshop, we'll talk about frozen semen, because that has to be cared for as well, which most people forget to do, and your family doesn't give a hoot about it. And so you need to make a plan for that. There's preservationist programs going on in certain breeds that make sure that these dogs who are really wonderful in a breed, their legacy continues, but we all have to make a plan for it. So until next Wednesday at 6:30, I hope some of you show up again. I hope, Joy, you learned a lot. Again, the workshop's going to be October 16th and 17th, unless Rose tells me I'm wrong again, which I could be. It'll be probably from 10 to 12. And the link for it is in the chat if you want to copy it and go look at it. It is chock full, as you can tell. I talk a lot, but I give you so much great information. And when you leave, you will have the MAP plan created, done. So until next week, Deborah Hamilton, Hamilton Law Mediation, the Why Do Pets Matter podcast, and of course, this wonderful MAP community. I love you all. Have a great night.